My name's Ethan. Back in my early 20s, I hitchhiked across the forgotten parts of America. The kind of towns you don't see on maps unless you zoom in too far. Places folded between mountains, swallowed by forests, stitched together by two-lane highways and rusted mailboxes. That summer, I was cutting through northern Montana. I remember standing on top of a dry ridge at sunset, shielding my eyes from the low red sun. Below me stretched a valley of dark green pines and scattered farmland, barns with peeling paint, silver grain silos leaning like tired soldiers, smoke rising from chimneys and slow, lazy threads. The air was thick and warm. It smelled like dry sagebrush, manure from cattle pens, and wood smoke, the sharp kind, pine-heavy and resinous. Somewhere down there, someone was burning something old. I hadn't eaten since morning. The last of my food had been a stale gas station muffin I'd shared with a trucker heading east. I had no money left, just a folding knife, a pack of matches, and a torn backpack with a busted side zipper. No water either. Walking into town looking like I did, grease-stained shirt, scruffy beard, sunburnt face, would earn me either a slammed door or a shotgun warning. But I had experience. Rural America still held onto old fears, old beliefs, and old guilt. So I reached into my pack and pulled out the canvas poncho I used for camping. It was faded, but it hung just right over my shoulders. I tied a length of cord around my waist, pushed my hair back, straightened my posture, softened my eyes, and practiced the voice. Slow, gentle, steady. I'd done this before. I wasn't proud of it, but people in isolated towns trusted two things: religion and suffering. If you looked like both, you'd eat. I started down the narrow dirt path toward the town. Grasshoppers snapped in the tall weeds. The wind moved through the fields in waves. By the time I reached the first fence line, dogs were already barking. Small, high-pitched things that sounded braver than they were. A screen door creaked open. An elderly woman stepped onto her porch, squinting at me. She wore a thick knitted cardigan despite the heat, gray hair tied back tight. "Who are you?" she called. I stopped at the gate and bowed my head slightly. "My name is Ethan, ma'am. I'm traveling, walking where the Lord sends me." Her eyes narrowed. "Walking preacher?" Something like that. She studied me for a long moment. Out here, people measure you with silence. "You affiliated with a church?" "I was, up near Coeur d'Alene, but I've been called to travel." I made sure not to overdo it. Too polished sounds fake. Too humble sounds rehearsed. She stepped off the porch and opened the gate. "We don't have a full-time pastor here. One comes through every few weeks. What exactly are you doing?" "Helping where I can. Prayers, blessings, sometimes cleansing." That word always landed. Her expression shifted just slightly. "Cleansing?" "Sometimes homes carry burdens people don't understand." I didn't smile. You never smile when you say that. She hesitated, then motioned me forward. "Well, you can eat first. We'll see about the rest." Her name was Martha Hill, and before sunset, she'd already decided I was useful. The town was small. One main road, a feed store, a gas pump that looked older than I was, rusted farm trucks parked half in grass, porch swings creaking. People watched me from behind curtains. A man in overalls leaned on a shovel as we passed. "Who's that?" he asked. "Preacher," Martha said before I could. He eyed me. "You don't wear a collar." "I don't advertise," I replied calmly. "Faith isn't for display." He grunted and turned away. Martha leaned closer and whispered, "Don't mind Dale. He's sour." We stopped in front of a modest farmhouse with white paint peeling near the windows. "This is my sister-in-law Barbara," she said. "She's been having trouble." Barbara was waiting on the porch, round-faced, barefoot, holding a bowl of cherries she'd been pitting. She didn't look possessed. She looked annoyed. "This him?" she asked. Martha nodded. Barbara looked me over. "Well, if you can figure out why my cream keeps disappearing and why something scratches the walls at night, I'll believe you're worth feeding." I stepped inside. The house smelled like cooked onions and old wood. There were family photos on the walls, a small wooden cross above the doorway, and a cat. The cat was sitting by the window, watching me. Animals always know. "When does it happen?" I asked. "Evenings," Barbara said. "Right before bed. Scratching, banging. Something knocks over the ladle by the stove. And the cream I leave out for coffee? Gone." "Where does the cat sleep?" "Wherever it wants." I walked into the mudroom. There it was, a small metal bowl, dried milk residue around the rim, claw marks on the floor. I crouched and ran my fingers across the wood. Predictable, simple. I stood. "There's a restless presence here," I said quietly. Martha gasped. Barbara's eyes widened. "It feeds," I continued, "but it's not violent, not yet." That word again, not yet. Barbara swallowed. "What do we do?" "I'll need salt and a hot pan." While she fetched it, I scooped up the cat gently and carried it outside behind the shed. Set it down past the fence line. It darted off. Problem solved. I went back in, heated salt in a cast iron skillet, sprinkled some near the door frames, muttered Psalm 91 from memory. I'd learned it years ago during another performance. Barbara clutched her cross the whole time. When I finished, I stepped onto the porch and scattered a final line of salt across the threshold. "It won't bother you again." Barbara stared at me. "You're serious?" "Yes." She nodded slowly. "You can stay the night." That evening, I ate stew and cornbread at her table. The sun sank red behind the tree line, and the town exhaled into night. They didn't know it yet, but I had just begun something that wouldn't end cleanly. Because that valley wasn't just superstitious. It was empty for a reason. And before morning came, I would learn exactly why. By morning, the cat was gone. Barbara mentioned it casually over coffee. "Strange," she muttered, peering out the window. "Usually that thing never leaves the porch." I kept my expression neutral. "Sometimes when a house is cleansed," I said, stirring sugar into my cup, "animals don't feel the need to guard it anymore." Martha nodded as if that made perfect sense. Barbara seemed half convinced, half unsettled. I excused myself after breakfast and walked the dirt road out of town, cutting through a line of trees before circling back from the south. There was another settlement about 2 miles over, smaller, poorer. I found a man sitting on a sagging porch there, drinking from a chipped mug. "Got yourself a mouser," I said, holding the sack loosely. He raised an eyebrow. "Yeah. Best rat killer you'll find. Won't need much feeding." He scratched his stomach through his t-shirt. "What's the catch?" "No catch. I'm passing through. If it doesn't work out, I'll swing back in a few days." He considered it, then nodded. I handed over the cat. In return, I walked away with 2 packs of cigarettes and a little less weight on my conscience. Almost less. When I returned to Barbara's place, she was pacing. "Still no sign of him," she said. I gave a sympathetic nod. Sometimes when darkness leaves, it takes something with it. She swallowed that whole. Around noon, Martha approached me with something else.
"You're not just here to wander, are you?" she asked carefully. "I go where I'm needed." She leaned closer.
Well, you may have work. That word always had a different tone in small towns. What kind of work? She lowered her voice. Mayor Calloway. I'd seen the house already, bigger than the rest. Modern siding, a black SUV parked crooked in the gravel. Front yard overgrown like no one had mowed in weeks. Something wrong? I asked. Martha hesitated. His wife and daughter disappeared 3 nights ago. I blinked once. That's serious. They didn't take clothes, didn't take phones, nothing. And him? She grimaced. Drinking, ranting, says he sees things in the walls. Ah, there it was. I kept my face solemn. What kind of things? He told Dale he sees faces in mirrors, something standing in the hallway at night. A woman with wet hair, a baby that crawls on the ceiling. My stomach tightened, just slightly. Hallucinations weren't rare in men who drank hard enough, but the consistency of details, that pricked at something deeper. He'll pay, Martha added quietly, if you help him. There it was, payment. Mayor Daniel Calloway answered the door himself, mid-40s, thick build, beard untrimmed, eyes bloodshot. The house smelled like stale liquor and something damp. He stared at me for a long moment. You're the preacher. I've been told you need help. He laughed once. It wasn't humor. You believe in demons? I believe guilt makes doors. That caught him. He stepped aside. Inside, the place was a mess. Dishes unwashed, clothes on the floor, TV running static in the background. On the coffee table sat a framed photo. A woman with brown hair. A little girl, maybe 8 years old, both smiling. They left, he said. Without a word? Without anything. He grabbed a bottle from the counter and took a long swallow. Then the whispering started. Whispering. In the hallway, in the walls, in the goddamn mirrors. He slammed the bottle down. They stand there, watching. My heartbeat ticked up. Who does? He turned slowly toward the dark corridor leading deeper into the house. She does. Your wife? He nodded once. But wrong. He stepped closer to me. Wet, like she climbed out of something. A cold sensation crept up my spine. And the child? He swallowed. On the ceiling. The same description. The same details Martha had mentioned. Independent corroboration. That's when it stopped being a simple con. Show me, I said. He led me down the hallway. The lights flickered, or maybe that was just my nerves. At the end of the corridor stood a tall mirror, antique, slightly warped glass. You see it there? He whispered. I looked. At first, nothing, just my reflection. His reflection behind me. Then, something shifted. Subtle, like the depth of the glass extended farther than it should. And for the briefest flicker, I saw hair. Dark, long, hanging forward. My breath stalled. I blinked. Gone. I stepped closer. The surface rippled faintly, like disturbed water. Don't, Calloway hissed. The hallway temperature dropped. I felt it. Actually felt it. And from somewhere deeper in the house, a soft sound. Not wind, not pipes. A child's low humming. My stomach dropped. Calloway's hand trembled violently. You hear it? He whispered. I did.
God help me, I did. And that was the moment I realized something had followed me. Or maybe I had followed it. The humming stopped the second we both acknowledged it. That's how it works, I would later understand. It doesn't perform. It waits to be noticed. Calloway's breathing grew shallow, ragged. He gripped my sleeve like a drowning man. "You hear it?" he whispered again. "Tell me I'm not crazy." I didn't answer immediately, because if I said yes, this was real. If I said no, I was alone in it.
Instead, I walked toward the sound. The air in the hallway felt wrong, thick, pressurized, like before a thunderstorm. The humming started again, soft, childlike, but off-key. We moved toward the kitchen. The overhead light flickered once, then steadied. The sound was coming from above. Slowly, carefully, I lifted my eyes toward the ceiling. At first, there was nothing but yellowed paint and a faint water stain near the vent. Then, the stain moved, just slightly, like something shifting behind it. Calloway made a choking sound. The stain darkened, spread outward in a thin, branching pattern. And then, a small hand pressed outward from beneath the ceiling, not breaking through, just pressing, flattening the paint like thin paper. 5 tiny fingers. Then a face, distorted, as if submerged beneath ice. Eyes closed, mouth open, humming. My legs locked. Every instinct screamed to run, but Calloway stepped forward instead. "Emma?" he croaked. The face's eyes snapped open. They were completely white. The ceiling bulged. The body began to crawl forward inside the structure of the house, between beams, behind plaster, moving like something swimming through water. Fast. Too fast. It reached the hallway above us in seconds. The humming stopped. And from the mirror at the end of the hall, a loud crack split the glass. Calloway stumbled backward. I grabbed his arm. "Out," I said. We ran for the front door. Halfway there, the hallway light exploded. Glass showered down. From behind us came the sound of something dragging across drywall. Then a voice. Soft. Female. "Daniel." Calloway froze. I didn't look back. I dragged him out onto the porch. The door slammed shut behind us. On its own. We both stood there gasping in the daylight. The town looked normal, still, peaceful. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. The world didn't match what we'd just seen. Calloway dropped to his knees in the gravel. "I buried him wrong," he muttered. I stared at him. "What?" "My son." My pulse spiked. "You said you had one daughter." He shook his head violently. "We had a son first." His voice cracked. "He was born premature, weak. The doctor said he wouldn't make it." He wiped his face with shaking hands. "We didn't want anyone to know. We delivered at home. He died within hours." A cold pit opened in my stomach. "What did you do with the body?" He didn't answer immediately, and that silence told me everything. "Daniel," I said firmly. He swallowed hard. The ground was frozen. I'd been drinking. I panicked. His eyes drifted toward the tree line beyond his property. "I took him into the woods, near the creek." A buzzing filled my ears. I'd heard this story before, but never with the ceiling moving. "Where exactly?" I asked. 2 twin birch trees, near the water." The humming started again, inside the house, but this time, there was another sound layered beneath it. Wet breathing, and something heavy shifting across the floor. Calloway looked at the door. I can't go back in there." "You don't have to," I said, because I wasn't going back in either. By sunset, we were walking toward the woods. Calloway carried a shovel. I carried a flashlight and something I didn't believe in, a Bible. The forest swallowed sound quickly. Crickets went silent as we passed. Branches scraped at our clothes. The creek glistened faintly under moonlight when we reached it. And there they were. 2 birch trees grown together at the base. Calloway stopped walking. "This is it." The ground beneath them looked undisturbed. Too undisturbed. "Dig," I said. He hesitated, then drove the shovel into the soil. The first few inches came up easy, then the earth grew dense, wet, dark. He kept digging, and then the shovel struck something soft. Not wood, not stone, something that shifted. Calloway dropped the shovel. The ground between the trees began to sink inward, slowly, like breath being drawn. The soil collapsed in on itself, and from the hole, a small, pale shape began to rise. Not crawling, not climbing, floating upward through the earth as if gravity had reversed. Its body was swollen, skin stretched tight and gray. Its mouth hung open, and its tongue, too long, pink. Dragging through the dirt behind it, Calloway staggered backward. "I'm sorry," he whispered. The thing turned its head. Its white eyes locked onto him. Then it leapt. Not at him, at me. Its weight slammed into my chest, cold, wet. Its mouth opened wider than possible, and I saw, inside, more than one set of teeth. Something else lived inside it. I hit the ground hard. Its tongue wrapped around my throat, burning cold, squeezing. From behind it, another shape stepped out of the trees. A woman. White nightgown clinging to her body, hair covering her face. Water dripping from her hem, though the creek was 10 feet away. She raised a hand and pointed not at Calloway, at me, because I wasn't supposed to be here. And whatever this was, it recognized a liar. The tongue tightened around my throat. It wasn't warm, it wasn't cold. It felt like something that had never been alive trying to imitate flesh. I clawed at it, fingers slipping against a slick surface that pulsed faintly, like it had its own heartbeat. The infant's face hovered inches from mine, its white eyes flickered, and for a split second, they weren't white. They were brown. Human. A child's eyes. Then the illusion shattered, its jaw unhinged wider, too wide. Calloway and lunged forward with the shovel. He swung blindly, the metal edge connected with the creature's side. The sound wasn't bone-breaking. It was wet, like hitting soaked meat. The thing, not loud, but sharp, piercing, and released me. I rolled away, tearing the Bible from my jacket pocket without thinking. I didn't even know why I stepped back. The woman in the nightgown drifted closer. She wasn't walking. Her feet didn't disturb the leaves. Her hair slowly parted. Her face beneath was wrong. Not decayed, not monstrous, just empty. No eyes, only dark hollows where they should have been. Her mouth opened, and from inside came the same humming, but layered, deeper now. Male, female, child, all at once. The infant twisted in the air and moved sideways, climbing one of the birch trees unnaturally fast, its limbs bending in ways they shouldn't. Calloway dropped the shovel. "I didn't mean to," he shouted, his voice breaking. "I was drunk. I was scared." The woman tilted her head, and from the creek behind us, there was another splash, a heavy one.
something large shifting beneath the surface. I forced myself to stand. "This isn't just about the burial," I said, my voice hoarse. Calloway looked at me, eyes wide. "What?" "They're not angry." He stared at me, confused. "They're feeding." The woman's mouth stretched wider, her jaw lowered further than it should have. Inside, there was no throat, only darkness. And within that darkness, movement, shapes pressing forward, as if something inside her was trying to emerge. The creek burst upward, water sprayed into the air. From it rose a pale, writhing form, not separate bodies, but something fused together, arms and torsos woven into one shifting mass. Calloway fell backward. "Jesus Christ!" The infant dropped from the tree and landed beside the larger shape, dissolving into it, like it had never been separate at all. The woman stepped backward and merged with the moving form. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't a haunting. It was accumulation. Every wrong burial, every unmarked grave, every child left without name or witness. It didn't want forgiveness. It wanted addition. The ground beneath us softened, sinking, pulling at our boots.
Calloway grabbed my arm. "What do we do?" And for the first time since I started pretending to have answers, I didn't have one. The mass began moving toward us. Not fast, not rushed, deliberate, certain. As if certain we couldn't escape. I grabbed the shovel and drove it deep into the earth between the trees. "Dig!" Calloway stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "Dig what?" "Deeper!" The soil gave way suddenly, too easily. The hole widened, collapsed inward, and beneath the shallow grave was not dirt. It was wood. Old wood. Rotting. A coffin lid. Calloway froze. "I never buried him in a coffin," he said. I slammed the shovel down again, splitting the decayed lid. The mass lunged. Calloway screamed and grabbed my shoulder, hauling me backward as the coffin cracked open. Inside, empty. No bones, no cloth, nothing. The ground trembled. The writhing shape recoiled violently. The woman's form peeled partially away from it, shrieking in layered tones. "They weren't buried," I breathed. Calloway shook his head wildly. "No, I left him wrapped in a blanket. Just dirt, just—" The coffin beneath us split fully apart, and from below, hands shot upward, dozens of them, grabbing, pulling, not at us, at the mass. The fused creature shrieked as the hands seized its limbs, tearing pieces away. The infant face stretched and split, dissolving into strands that snapped back into the darkness below. The woman's empty sockets widened. She reached toward Calloway. Not in attack, in accusation. "You left us," the layered voice whispered. Then the earth swallowed her. The mass collapsed inward as if sucked into a vacuum. The creek stilled. The forest exhaled. And silence returned. Calloway dropped to his knees. The hole between the birches now gaped wide, revealing not one coffin, but many. Stacked, broken, old, some newer than others. All empty. My throat felt raw. "This wasn't just you," I said. Calloway's head snapped up. "What?" "This town." The wind shifted, and from somewhere deeper in the woods, I heard footsteps. More than one. Approaching. Not from the creek. From the direction of the town. Calloway heard it too. He turned pale. "That's not possible," he said. But I already knew. We hadn't uncovered the source. We had opened a door, and whatever had been buried beneath this valley wasn't done collecting. The footsteps didn't hurry. They crunched slowly through leaves, steady and deliberate, like whoever was coming had all the time in the world. Calloway grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. "Who's out here?" he said. I didn't answer, because I already knew the answer wasn't going to make sense. The trees parted slightly ahead of us, and through the thin fog rising off the creek I saw silhouettes, 3 of them, standing side by side, still watching. One was tall and broad, one shorter, one small, child-sized. My stomach dropped. Calloway made a broken sound in his throat. "That's them," he said. "That's my family." The shapes didn't move closer, but they were wrong. The tall one's head tilted too far to the side. The smaller one's arms hung longer than they should. The child's outline flickered faintly, like a bad signal. Then they stepped forward. Moonlight hit their faces, and I realized something horrifying. They weren't decayed. They weren't drowned or broken. They looked exactly like the people in the photo on his table. Perfect. Alive. Smiling. "Daniel?" the woman said softly. Her voice carried cleanly through the trees. Calloway staggered forward. "No," I snapped, grabbing him, but he pulled free. "Sarah?" he whispered. The little girl stepped closer. "Daddy?" she said. That voice, too smooth, too even. Calloway collapsed to his knees. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean—" The woman smiled wider. And that's when her jaw cracked. Just slightly. Too wide. Her skin stretched thin along her cheeks, splitting at the corners of her mouth. The little girl's eyes blinked out. Gone. Just smooth skin where they had been. The tall figure, the man's shape, didn't speak at all. It just stood behind them, watching me. I took a slow step backward. This wasn't just about Calloway. This thing had learned something new. It wasn't appearing as horror anymore. It was appearing as hope. "Daniel," the woman repeated. "Come home." Calloway rose shakily to his feet. "I'll fix it," he said. "I'll do anything." The girl tilted her head. "You already did." Her mouth opened, and inside, darkness. Moving darkness. Calloway stepped closer. I grabbed the shovel again. "Daniel, stop!" He didn't. He walked right up to them. The woman reached out. Her hand touched his cheek. For a moment, nothing happened. Then her fingers sank into his skin. Not cutting, not tearing, just sinking, like his flesh had turned to soft clay. Calloway gasped, but he didn't pull away. The tall shape behind them began to shift. Its outline rippled, its arms elongated, and I saw faces pressing outward along its torso. Not just his wife, not just his child. Others. Dozens, maybe more. Men, women, infants. All pressed flat beneath stretched, translucent skin. The thing leaned forward and wrapped itself around Calloway. He didn't scream. He smiled. The little girl looked at me. "You lie," she said calmly. The ground beneath my feet trembled again. I stumbled backward. The birch trees groaned as their roots shifted. Calloway's body was halfway absorbed now. His arms no longer visible, his face still outside the surface of the thing. Eyes wide. Not terrified. Relieved. "I see them now," he whispered. Then his head was pulled inward. The surface sealed. The three separate shapes merged into one towering form, 10 feet tall, made of bodies pressed together like wet paper. It turned toward me, slowly, purposefully. The forest behind it seemed to darken unnaturally, as if light refused to touch it. I backed away step by step. "You don't belong here," the layered voice said. "You pretend to carry faith." The ground split slightly behind my heel. I almost fell into one of the opened coffin pits. The thing moved closer, and now I could see clearly. Among the pressed faces within its mass was one I recognized. Martha, the old woman, her mouth open in silent scream. My blood went cold. They weren't just collecting the guilty. They were collecting the believers, the trusting, the ones who opened doors. This town wasn't haunted. It was harvested. "You started this," the voice continued, "by speaking of cleansing." Its surface rippled, and more faces pushed outward. Some I had seen in passing earlier that day. A man in overalls, a woman behind a curtain. They hadn't just been watching me. They had already been taken. The thing extended a limb, not an arm, a rope of fused hands stretching toward my chest. I swung the shovel hard. It sliced through the limb. The severed piece hit the ground and began crawling independently toward my boot. I kicked it away and ran. Branches tore at my clothes. The forest twisted around me. The humming returned, but now it was everywhere. Above, below, inside my head. I didn't look back. I could feel it following, not fast. It didn't need to rush. It knew something I didn't. The trees thinned suddenly, and I burst out onto the dirt road at the edge of town. Lights were on in several houses. Porch swings moved gently. Doors stood slightly open. Too many open doors. I slowed. Something was wrong. Too quiet. The gas station light flickered at the end of the road, and under it stood a figure. Small, child-sized. The little girl. She smiled at me from across the street, and behind her, every house door slowly creaked wider. Every door on the street stood open, not wide, just enough, like mouths waiting to breathe. The little girl stood beneath the flickering gas station light, her dress hanging perfectly still despite the wind. Her eyes were back now, brown, soft, almost curious. "You can still stay," she said gently. Her voice carried across the empty road like we were the only two people left alive. I scanned the houses. Porches empty, rocking chairs moving slowly, curtains fluttering. But I could feel it. Inside every home, pressing against walls, breathing through vents. Watching. "I'm not staying," I said. She tilted her head. "You already did." The lights inside the nearest house flicked off, then the next, then the next, one by one until only the gas station lamp remained. The girl stepped backward into the dark. The light above her burst, and the town went black. I ran, past the feed store, past Martha's house. Her porch swing creaked in the darkness. I could see something sitting in it, a shape, still watching me pass. The humming rose again, but it wasn't coming from one direction. It was beneath the road, under the soil, under the foundations. The ground pulsed faintly with each step I took, like a heartbeat. The entire valley was wrong, not haunted, occupied. I reached the edge of town where the highway curved out toward the open fields. My trucker luck had run dry. No cars, no lights in the distance. Just the moon hanging thin and pale above the valley. Behind me, footsteps. Not many. Hundreds. Soft. In sync. I turned. They were standing at the edge of town. All of them. Martha, Barbara, Dale. Faces I'd seen through curtains. Faces I hadn't noticed. Standing shoulder to shoulder across the width of the road. Still. Their expressions neutral, empty. Behind them, rising above rooftops, the towering fused shape from the forest. It stretched higher now, broader, as if fed. Its surface rippled with movement, faces pressing outward like something trying to be born. "You give people belief," the layered voice echoed. "You make them open." I stepped backward toward the highway. "I didn't open anything," I said. The girl's voice answered from somewhere inside the mass. "You named it." The ground cracked along the edge of the road. Thin fissures spiderwebbed outward, and from within those cracks, hands emerged. Pale, small, large, reaching, not grabbing yet, just waiting. My pulse thundered in my ears. I'd played preacher in 100 towns, used fear as leverage, used guilt as currency. But this wasn't built from my lies. It was older. This valley had been abandoned once before, and something had settled into the emptiness. Something that wore grief like a mask. The mass began to move forward, slow, relentless. The townspeople stepped aside to let it pass, like congregants making room for a procession. "You belong with us," it said. Faces along its surface shifted, and I saw someone new among them, a man in a trucker cap, the one who'd given me that last ride into the valley. His eyes rolled upward, mouth silently screaming beneath stretched skin. It hadn't started tonight. It had started before I even arrived. I turned and ran down the highway. The hands burst fully from the asphalt behind me, clawing, stretching. The road split open in long, tearing lines. The sound was unbearable, like bone cracking inside the earth. I sprinted until my lungs burned, until my vision blurred, until I saw headlights, far ahead, a single pair, approaching. I waved frantically. The truck slowed, an old pickup. Driver rolled down his window. "You okay?" I didn't look back. "Don't stop," I said. "Just drive." He hesitated, then unlocked the door. I threw myself inside. "Floor it." He did. The truck accelerated. In the side mirror, I saw the valley receding. The town lights flickering back on. Perfectly normal. Still, no figures on the road, no cracks in the asphalt. Just empty Montana quiet. The driver glanced at me. "You look like hell." "Yeah." We drove in silence for several miles. Then he asked casually, "You from that town back there?" I stared straight ahead. "No." He nodded. "Good." The way he said it made my stomach twist. I slowly turned my head, his reflection in the windshield. For just a second, didn't match him. His mouth was wider in the reflection, his eyes slightly too large, blinking independently. The humming started again, very faint, from the truck bed behind us. The driver's lips curved into a small smile. "You shouldn't lie about faith," he said. The road ahead narrowed. The darkness thickened, and I realized I hadn't escaped the valley. The valley had let me leave. The humming in the truck bed grew louder. Not mechanical, not wind. Breathing. Layered breathing. The driver didn't look at me, he just kept smiling faintly at the road ahead. "You know what the problem is with men like you?" he asked calmly. I kept my hand near the door handle, no sudden moves. "No," I said. You don't believe in what you sell. The road stretched ahead, empty, swallowed by darkness. No signs, no mile markers, no familiar bends. Wrong highway, wrong direction. The humming shifted into something almost like whispering. I glanced in the side mirror again. The truck bed tarp was moving, slowly rising and falling, as if something underneath was expanding. "Pull over," I said quietly. The driver's fingers tightened on the steering wheel. "Can't." "Why not?" "Because it's already inside." The tarp in the back split down the middle. A pale arm unfolded upward, then another. Then faces pressed against the thin fabric from below, distorting it outward like wet paper. The truck swerved slightly. The driver's reflection in the windshield began to lag behind his movements. Half a second off, then a full second, then the reflection turned its head toward me. But the driver did not. The reflection smiled wider than his real face ever could. I grabbed the steering wheel and pulled it sharply to the right. The truck swerved. The driver shouted. We slid off the road and into the ditch, crashing through brush and thin trees. The world spun. Once, twice. Metal groaned. Glass shattered. And then silence. When I opened my eyes, everything was upside down. The windshield was broken. Cold night air drifted in. For a moment, I just listened. The humming was gone. I unlatched my seatbelt and dropped onto what used to be the roof. Pain pulsed through my ribs as I crawled toward the broken window and pulled myself outside. The truck lay on its side, still. The driver was gone. No sign of him. Just the driver's door hanging open, moving slightly in the wind. I stepped back onto the dirt shoulder. The highway stretched behind me. Empty. Quiet. No lights. No town in the distance. Only open plains beneath a pale sky. For a second, I wondered if I had imagined everything. But the back of the truck was torn open. The metal bed bent outward from the inside, as if something had forced its way out. I slowly stepped away. The wind moved through the tall grass, whispering softly. And then, somewhere far behind me, I heard it. Children laughing. I turned quickly. Nothing. Just dark fields. The laughter faded. I started walking. Didn't care where, just away. Away from roads, away from towns, away from anywhere with doors. By sunrise, I reached a small highway diner. A neon sign flickered. Open. Normal. Cars parked outside, people inside drinking coffee, talking quietly. I stood there for a long moment before going in. When I pushed the door open, the bell above it chimed. A few heads turned, just briefly, then went back to their meals. I slid into a booth. A waitress approached. Mid-40s, tired eyes, kind smile. "You look rough," she said gently. "Long night," I replied. She poured coffee without asking. The smell steadied me. Familiar. Real. I wrapped my hands around the warm cup.
"You passing through?" she asked casually.
Yeah. From where? I hesitated. Then I made a decision.
No idea.
She chuckled softly. Well, that's honest at least. Honest. The words sat heavy. I watched the steam rise from the coffee. Across the diner, a little girl sat with her mother. Brown hair, maybe 6 years old. She looked at me and smiled. My chest tightened. Her mother kept talking, unaware. The girl tilted her head just slightly too far. The coffee in my hands began to vibrate, very faintly, ripples forming on the surface. The humming started again, soft, under the floorboards, under the foundation, under the world. I stood up abruptly. The waitress frowned. "You okay?" I looked at her, really looked, and for a fraction of a second, her eyes were hollow, dark sockets. Then normal again. "You can't run from belief," a voice whispered. Not in the room, in my head. The little girl across the diner pressed her hand flat against the table. The wood beneath her palm darkened, warped, softened, like earth after rain. People around her didn't react, didn't see, because it wasn't for them. It was for me. "You make doors," the whisper continued. "Everywhere you go." The humming grew louder, and I understood something terrible. It wasn't the valley. It wasn't the town. It wasn't even the graves. It was invitation. And I had spent years teaching people how to open themselves to what they couldn't see. Repent, confess, reveal, open. And something had been listening. Not just there, everywhere. Feeding on guilt, on grief, on fear shaped like faith. The little girl's mouth stretched, not wide, just enough. "Stay," she mouthed silently. I walked backward toward the door. The bell jingled again as I pushed out into the morning light. The humming dulled slightly, but it didn't disappear. It followed, like breath at the back of my neck, like a congregation behind a preacher. I don't use the name Ivan anymore. I don't wear robes.
I don't speak of cleansing or spirits. I don't tell stories about demons. I don't even joke about faith. But sometimes, in roadside motels, in empty gas stations, in towns that feel just a little too quiet, I see doors standing slightly open. And I know, it isn't chasing me, it's learning from me. And wherever someone is desperate enough to believe, wherever someone opens themselves up in hope or fear, it's already there, waiting to be named.